to our virtual catalogue launch party, celebrating the new 2023 Mini and Sale-a-bration catalogues. My name is Michelle Grech from stampmichelle.com. I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator in Melbourne, Australia. Today I'm going to be showcasing a project featuring the Fragrant Flowers bundle from the Mini Catalogue and the coordinating designer series paper from the Sale-a-bration catalogue. Let's take a quick look at the products. You can find the Fragrant Flowers bundle on page 21 of the Mini Catalogue. So the bundle features, first of all, the Fragrant Flowers stamp set, which has this beautiful, bold, large outline flower and some bold, large sentiments, a smaller flower, a couple of smaller sentiments, and this interesting geometric pattern. The coordinating dies have obviously the dies that cut the images from the stamp set, and also some additional foliage and flower dies here, a couple of label dies, and also this interesting die down here which actually doesn't cut but will emboss your cardstock or designer series paper, giving you a nice textured look on your project. But I think really the hero of the project I'm sharing with you today is this Favoured Flowers designer series paper, which you can find on page 11 of the Sale-a-bration catalogue. Let me just bring in some of the paper just to give you a quick look. So it features these beautiful bold flowers in petal pink, fresh freesia and calypso coral on a black background. Bit more busier pattern there. Some of these flowers can be cut with the coordinating dies from the bundle. I really do love how well these stand out on this paper, and it really is so pretty in real life. And these are the just geometric type patterns on the back in the coordinating colours. Of course, this is a Sale-a-bration paper, so this is a paper that you can earn for free with a $90 order if you live in Australia, or of course it will be a different qualifying amount if you're in another market. Okay, let's move on to our project. So for today's project, I decided to go with a fancy fold card. I wanted to hero both the beautiful large outline stamp here and the gorgeous designer series paper. So I'll be going with a fancy fold called a double point flap card. Quite a few moving parts, but not very difficult at all. Probably not for the beginner crafter, but definitely for the casual or avid crafter. I'm an over-the-top crafter, or an avid crafter, as we might know them. And so I love fancy fold cards and anything that's interactive with lots of layers and ribbon and embellishments and all those sorts of things. So hopefully you'll enjoy today's project. So let's just go through the consumable supplies we'll need for the project. So first of all, we have a piece of white, which we will have just for stamping and die cutting. We will have a quarter A4 sheet. Now these are metric measurements. I'm in the South Pacific, so this is a 10.5 by 14.9 size card. This will be our card base. Then we'll have a piece of fresh freesia, and this measures 20 centimetres across, which is almost the width of our A4 card, and I've just cut 1 centimetre off, by 14.4 centimetres, scored at 10 centimetres in the middle. That's going to be our card base. This is our card base, but this is going to go on top of that. You will also have a white insert for the inside of your card, which is 9 centimetres by 13.9 centimetres. We'll have a beautiful piece of this designer series paper, which is 9.5 by 14.4. We'll have another piece of the designer series paper, has this pattern on the back, which is 9.5 centimetres square, and a piece of black 7 by 10 centimetres. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is take our square of designer series paper and our trimmer, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so that you can see that, and we're just going to cut that in half on the diagonal. So we're going to put it in our trimmer point to point lined up in the channel, and we're just going to cut that in half. Now, a tip when you're cutting designer series paper like this, and you're cutting from a very small point, is I like to start my cutting in the middle of my paper. So I'm popping my blade here in the middle. That will actually just stop you from tearing that point. Okay, now we're going to take one of those pieces and we're going to score it at 1.5 centimeters. I'm going to line up here. Sorry, I'll move that down so that you can see it. Going to line that up here at the 1.5 centimeter line, and we're just going to score gently along there. Don't press too hard. It's designer series paper and you will tear it if you press too hard. Again, now we're going to take the other piece and we're going to do exactly the same thing. So now that we have our 2 diagonal pieces there, I just want you to bring in your bone folder and just fold and burnish on those lines. Now we're going to bring back in our Fresh Freesia card base, the one that's 20 centimeters by 14.4. What we're going to do is we're going to position this at the top with the card base closed, and we're going to line it up at the top there so that our card is centered between the 2 points there. Don't worry if you've got a little bit of overhang, because we're going to trim that excess off. Just want you to make sure that it's completely lined up, an even distance on each side. And once you're happy with that, just going to go ahead and snip those edges off. And then we're just going to go ahead and do the same with the other piece. Okay, now that we've done that, we're just going to attach our diagonal flaps to the back of the card base. So you want your card opening in the normal way, and you're going to put some adhesive on this narrow edge here, and you're going to attach that to the back of the card. So I'm using liquid glue because I like the fact that it gives me just a little bit of wiggle room just to try and position my paper perfectly. So I'm just going to pick that up and I'm just going to pop that in there like that. So we're just attaching it to the back of the card. Make sure that it folds over nicely at the top. I always end up with sticky fingers when I use liquid glue. Don't know about you. Actually. Okay, and now I'm going to repeat again for my other piece at the bottom. So now I have my top and bottom flaps attached. I'm going to bring in my other piece of designer series paper and I'm going to adhere that just to the front of my card base there. So now I want you to just bring in your black card base panel here and we're just going to attach that on there. Just make sure that when you're sticking that down that you have the flaps closed, just so that you can make sure that your border all the way around is even. It's a bit hard to tell when the flaps are opened up. Okay, and that's pretty much our card base done. Now we're going to bring in our remaining piece of black cardstock, 7 centimeters by 10 centimeters, and we're going to attach that panel to the front but we're just going to adhere it here to this top triangle here. We're not going to attach it down here at the bottom because we want it to be able to open. We want it to be able to open up like this. Otherwise, we won't be able to get our card open. And I find the easiest way to do that is, rather than put adhesive across here and risk getting it in areas where you don't want it, is to actually just put a little bit on the bottom of this triangle point here. And you don't want too much because you don't want it to be oozing out everywhere. And then we're just going to line that up here, making sure that you have an even amount of space, top and bottom, and right and left. And I'm just eyeballing it here. I'm not measuring that. The liquid glue will give you a little bit of wiggle room just to move it around if you need to. And then that's our front panel here, which we're going to decorate. Okay, we'll just put that to the side now. And we're going to bring in our piece of scrap white. We're going to do our stamping, and I'm going to be using the large outline flower here. These are great. These large outline flowers are really good for colouring. So you can actually colour these with any of our colouring mediums. So you could use Stampin' Blends, watercolour pencils, you could use blends and ink pads, blending brushes. There are heaps of things that you could use to colour these images. But in this case today, I'm actually just going to leave it black and white. I think the paper that I'm using in my card is already busy enough. And I do want to make sure that I don't detract from that paper as well. So I'm just going to leave this in black and white. So I'm just going to bring in the coordinating die and I'm going to cut that out. Now that I've cut this out, I'm just going to put some dimensionals on the back. And I'm going to position, now I've got my dimensionals on, I'm just going to position my flower onto the front of that basic black panel. I went ahead earlier and die cut some leaves in Mossy Meadow and one of the small flowers in the Fresh Freesia. And I'm just going to position those in behind my flower here. So some leaves up here. I think they will fit in up there. And my flower up the top here. And I'm just going to do that just with a little bit of liquid glue. Just going to gently pop that in behind there, gentle press. This is where you need to be a little bit careful about where you've put your dimensionals. I probably should have checked that before I stuck it down, but seems to be okay here. Okay, now we're just going to move on to the sentiment. And I've already gone ahead and die cut a label using the label die from the coordinating Fragrant Flowers dies. And I'm going to be using the bold word thanks. And I'm going to stamp that in Blackberry Bliss. Just move my card out of the way. Now, because this is a bold stamp, I really wanted to make sure that I get a nice crisp image. I've actually made sure that my ink pad is juicy. It's recently been re-inked, so I get good coverage on my stamp. And when I stamp, I'm going to make sure that I press down nice and hard, but that I just leave it there for a second or two just to allow the ink to absorb into the paper. And that should give me a nice crisp image. I'm going to attach that to the front of the card, but I'm not going to use dimensionals. I think this has already got enough height on it, so I'm just going to use a little bit of liquid glue just in the middle. Just enough to attach it to the front of the card. Okay, and lastly, I'm just left to complete the inside of the card. So we're going to take our inside panel and our Blackberry Bliss ink, and you can stamp whatever greeting you want in here. So whatever greeting you choose. I've actually just grabbed one from the Very Best Occasions stamp set, which is one of the stamp sets that's a carryover from a carryover from our July to December mini catalogue. And I've used the sentiment Endlessly Grateful. I'm just going to stamp that right in the centre there in Blackberry Bliss. And then that's just going to go in the centre of our card base. Now, of course, because I'm an over-the-top or avid stamper, no card would be finished without some embellishment. So I just decided on the 2021-23 in colour open rounds, opal rounds, not open, because they have the coordinating fresh freesia colour in there. And I'm just going to pick up a couple of those. I'm going to use my Take Your Pick tool to pick them up, slide them off the acetate, and then just straight onto your card. I could not live without my Take Your Pick tool. And of course, when you're putting embellishments on, the design rules would say that you should use 3. So I've got 2 down here. So I'm actually just going to take one more of the large ones and just pop it up in the corner up there. And that will give me my 3. And if you can do them in a triangle positioning, that will help draw your eye to the focal point of your card. Okay, and that's our card finished. Now, if you're concerned about the way this pops up down the bottom here, it doesn't bother me, but I know that it might bother some people. What you could actually do is just put a little fastener down here. So you could use a small Velcro dot, or you could use a little magnet down here. Or alternatively, you could put a sentiment down here where you can pop your front panel here underneath to help it stay closed. Personally, it doesn't bother me, but if it does bother you, those are some other options. Okay, hope you like that card. Thanks so much for joining me today. Make sure you check out some of the other projects that have been presented by the rest of our global stampers. There are over 50 of us who are presenting over the next couple of days, and I know there's going to be some fabulous ideas from lots of those stampers all over the globe. If this is your first time visiting my YouTube channel, thanks. I'd love for you to subscribe. Make sure you hit that bell so you can be notified of new videos when I load them up. Have an awesome day, and I hope to see you back here again soon. Bye-bye.